All right, welcoming you to our webinar for today. We're joined by our esteemed guest, Jill Farabelli, who is sharing on the topic of empowering caregivers. Jill is a licensed clinical social worker with decades and decades of experience in healthcare, and she's going to help us today learn how to navigate the role of caregiver with empowered grace. I can't wait to dive into this. And before we get going, I do want to remind you who are here live that we are recording this. And there will be some times where we're going to be interacting if that's something you feel comfortable doing. So I'm not, and rather than stopping the recording and all of that, I'm just going to follow up afterwards and get your preference as to whether you want to be edited out or left in. And it will remain on our YouTube channel in a public setting, but I doubt that too many people will just somehow find it if you're worried about that piece. At any rate, I really want to honor this safe space that Jill is going to help us create today by offering you that option. So as Jill, who has put together a beautiful slide deck for us, as she shares, I'll ask you to just remain muted. And then during those interactive pieces, you can come off of mute or type into the chat, and I can be your voice if you prefer. So let's go ahead and get rolling. I do want to just share a bit more about Jill. I've had the pleasure of meeting Jill at a Living Well with Blood Cancer event in Philadelphia, and I think it was a couple years ago. Neither of us can remember at this point. And she gave a presentation on caregiving. And I was attending as a caregiver of somebody with Waldenstrom's, my dad. And it just blew me away how little kind of thought I had given this role that I felt so honored to take on. And she really opened my eyes to a lot of the elements of caregiving that I really hadn't even considered. So I'm hoping that she'll do the same for our group. I really thought about this group right away. I was like, I want to bring this to IWMF. And Jill was so kind to say yes. And we've been going back and forth for a while now, setting this up. So a bit more about Jill. She specializes in psychosocial care of individuals living with serious illness, and as well as support for their caregivers. So she's, from every angle, Jill has the experience, and she's got an extensive background in hospice and palliative care, which has fueled her deep commitment to improving quality of life for patients and families navigating medical journeys that are somewhat complex. So that quality of life piece, it's not just a fluffy thing, it's a very important piece of the equation that can actually, it can actually affect your outcome. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word affect. And I've seen that with so many folks, including my own father. So she's board certified in both hospice and palliative care, social work, and she currently serves as the lead palliative care social work, and currently serves as the lead palliative care social worker at the Hospital of University of Pennsylvania and Abramson Cancer Center. And I think, Jill, I'm just going to just right out of the gate, can you please demystify the word palliative for us? Because I think in my journey with my father was like, I brought palliative care to him knowing that it was something different from what most people think it is.
Yeah, I would love to. I think the way that I look at palliative care is that it's trying to help people live well with a serious illness. And that looks, when I've certainly have walked into a room and said, I'm from palliative care, and you can see the look on people's face. Do you know something I don't know? Are you trying to sign me up for hospice? I've heard all the things that could possibly, and this phrase may be a little confusing. Hospice is a type of palliative care, but palliative care is not hospice care. So when you think about palliation, right, you're trying to make something feel better, whether that's physically, whether that's spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. That's the role of our team. And we've got lots of different disciplines on our team, physicians, nurse practitioners, myself. We're actually adding a chaplain here in a couple of weeks, which is fantastic. So really kind of helping with pain and symptom management, emotional component, and also thinking about advanced care planning in the future and what things might look like. And wrapped up in all of that is the emotional support piece, the psychological pieces where I fit into palliative care. And that is whether it's the patient, the caregiver, parents, kids. So the whole family, the whole community as a unit there. And so hopefully that helps maybe demystify it a little bit for you as well.
Absolutely. I mean, palliative care was game changing for my dad. It was the first conversation about quality of life we'd ever had in the whole journey. And the palliative care doctor who is on your team as well, Dr. Friedman, was amazing. You know, it was the first conversation that my dad had with anybody about anything other than like medical stuff. So how are you doing? You know, and it's really wonderful to have that. So I share I share the joy of palliative care with anybody I can. Very, very useful. And that palliative care doctor can be the glue that connects, or that palliative care social worker, the glue that connects all of these different people on your wellness team. So they have the big picture, which is so helpful. Anyway, I don't want to derail your whole presentation, Jill, but I do think it's a really important piece to understand where you're coming from and the kind of experience you have, which is so perfect for this subject. So please go ahead and take it away, and we'll go ahead and get on this caregiving journey together.
Great. Is it okay if I share my screen now? Thank you all for allowing me to be here with you. It really is quite an honor to be able to connect with you all. I realize that we might have different groups of people here, whether caregivers or I think Anne mentioned maybe there was people here that also had WM that were caregiving for someone else that didn't. And so it's really an honor to just be in the same space as people that are so dedicated and compassionate in terms of caregiving and your commitment to the way that you support your loved ones and each other is really quite inspiring to me. And I know in some ways you've all been impacted by Waldenstrom's, whether yourself or someone that you love. And this is more of a, I will say, kind of out of the gate, this is more of a general conversation. I would love for it to be informal. I have slides here. They're really to help organize, but also maybe highlight some components of caregiving that might be helpful for you all. I'm happy to share these, and you're welcome to send them out to the group too, if that's helpful. But I'd love for you at any point in time to sort of unmute, speak, chat. You are the experts here in the caregiving world. And so I would love to hear your perspective. And, you know, caregiving looks different for most people, whether it's because of the disease is different or whether it's developmentally, time of life, who the person is that you're caring for. Specifically with Waldenstrom's, we know that this illness is a marathon. It is not a sprint, and lots of folks can live for a long time with it and may die with it, not because of it. And so any phase of this caregiving experience can be difficult, and it might be lasting for some time. So I'm really here today to share some information. Maybe it's new, probably not, as you're in it day in and day out, but also hopeful to share and or offer some resources and maybe even some perspectives, as Anne mentioned, that sort of highlight things that you may be feeling, experiencing, wondering about, and just sort of offering some validation on what that looks like for other caregivers too. So whether you're navigating something new or looking for ways to sort of enhance your own self-care. My goal here is to not necessarily be the expert, but hopefully to offer you some insight, some encouragement, and some support. So again, I'm just going to say, please feel free to ask any questions, share your experience. And there will be a point where I kind of specifically ask that question too. But I want this to be more of a conversation than it is such a formal presentation. So as you can see, here are some goals that I sort of just gave us for today's session. So identifying who you all are, maybe some challenges, some coping strategies, and then some resources. So pretty general there, but let's go ahead and get started. I found this quote many years ago, and it may not be anything new to you all, but I felt like it really encompassed caregiving, and that caregiving is universal. There's only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregiving. So I think what this quote encompasses to me is how profound of an experience and far-reaching an experience of caregiving is, and that none of us are really exempt from it in any way, shape, or form. And so learning how to show up for ourselves through this process, I think, is really important. This is, I thought it might be helpful to throw in some statistics here, and these are actually taken from the AARP this past year, so 2025, even and from the presentation that I gave to you a couple of years ago, the numbers have changed. They've increased by about, so here we recognize there's about 63 million people in the US. And these are also United States statistics. So I apologize for those of you that are on here internationally, that 2 years ago, it was about 53 million. So you can see that number jumped quite significantly. We know that it's a full-time job. We know that most of you, or many of you, are working 40 hours a week and then doing caregiving. Nearly 1 in 4 caregivers reported working full-time and then also caring for their person. And about 1/3 of you all have been doing this for 5 or more years. A lot of caregivers are also raising children while they're caring for an adult. Some of the things that really stand out to me when I think about caregiving, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this too, is how the financial strain is really widespread. You know, a lot of caregivers experience at least one major financial impact, you know, whether it's using savings or taking on more debt or having to get more help in the home. And we know those of us as caregivers that maybe live in a rural area have even less access to those services. So it is quite challenging, you know, when you're quote unquote signing up to be a caregiver. It's an undertaking, right? And you do it out of love. And of course, you know, sometimes it's the only option. But I think it's really important to recognize the breadth of what you're all doing as caregivers. There's some other statistics on here that I think are maybe still important, but we don't necessarily have to talk about them in depth. The one part, the bottom, about caregiving and high rates of burnout, I'm going to come back to that at the end of the presentation and talk a little bit more about coping and burnout. But just to kind of keep this in mind, about 37% of adult caregivers report high burnout symptoms. This is a pretty alarming statistic, and I think it highlights how we need to take care of ourselves as we're doing this work, but also how difficult it is. And for some people, it may not be an option to spend a lot of time and or resources caring for yourself. So you're here because you're a caregiver. Maybe maybe preparing to be one, or expecting more caregiving responsibilities to come up in the future. Out of curiosity, were any of you actually trained to be a caregiver? See some heads shaking. Yeah.
Definitely
No,
no.
definitely not, right? Like it's not something we learn. So I certainly do not have to tell you that you are the unsung heroes of the healthcare world. You accompany patients through their most challenging times, both practically, emotionally, and really, you are indispensable here throughout your loved one's WM journey, experience, process. I might use these words interchangeably. I know that a lot of people have kind of strong feelings about the way that we talk about cancer and illness. And so I tend to say experience. I know some people like journey. I'm just giving this little caveat. So if there's a word that I use that feels offensive, please let me know and I will not use that. Try to use just a generic word here. But there's no job description for what you do either, right? Every caregiver's responsibilities are really unique. They vary and they change. So, as you can see this graph here, I put some things on here that really stood out to me as what you all do, but this certainly is not all inclusive. I'm sure there's lots of things that you do that may not fit into one of these categories. But as roles change, as new skills are needed, it might be one day helping with personal care, physical assistance, running errands, managing the housework, certainly at coordination of healthcare needs like scheduling appointments or specialist visits, maybe even coordinating social activities. A lot of caregivers tell me, like, I didn't think I would be a social activities director here too while I was caring for my loved one and trying to maintain ways of life that were once known and managing relationships, not just with people in your life, but also with the people that are taking care of you, like the healthcare teams. Medication management is a huge component of all of this too. I'm curious, are there some big categories that I forgot here? I would love for you to come off mute and let me know. When you think about what you do, what are some of those tasks or responsibility? Anyone? I'm also trying to
I also see some folks writing into the chat that Janice has written this covers it pretty well in my experience. And also just there are a range of different types of folks here. Some are caregivers to those with WM. So though some of us here have WM and are caring for somebody with other types of health issues. And there's somebody here who has written in that she is her own sole caregiver. So we've got the whole gamut, and thank you guys so
really,
much for
yeah.
sharing that. But Linda has written in food preparation for special diets,
Yeah, that is a good one. I forgot on here. I
personal
have
chef.
under daily living. I'll have to add that. Thanks, Linda, bringing that to my attention.
And Mary has written the emotional support piece is big. Just being there, a sounding board, balanced decision making, those sorts of things. Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to write in or share?
So now we have, you all have a sense, we have a kind of a collective sense, right, of what it is that you all do, whether for yourselves or for your loved ones. I would love to open it up now, and I may take this off of the slideshow here for a second. But before we dive a little bit deeper into some of the other, I'd love to hear from you. This is such a personal journey, and each and every story is so unique and important. So if you feel comfortable, I would love for anyone to just to share a little bit about your experience as a caregiver, maybe what's been meaningful to you along the way, what's been challenging. I think it's really important for your stories to be heard. They not only help us understand the real life side of caregiving, but create a space where we can learn from each other. There's no right or wrong thing to share here, just what feels important to you. So I'm going to pause it there for a second.
Can everybody see everybody? Linda, you had unmuted.
Yeah, I wanted to say that the IWMF has been huge and a wonderful support actually for both of us. My husband is the one who has Waldenstrom's and has had it for 14 years now. So yay, that's not the length of life we expected. And very early on, we made all kinds of plans for him not living this long. So now what's interesting and unique for us is, wow, we thought he was going to die, but here he still is. So but IWMF has been great at being a huge source of information and support for us. If you've met one Waldenstrom person, you've met one Waldenstrom person, because everybody's so different. And I would argue the same for caregivers. I thought I had a lot of caregiving experience with both of my parents, but this is an entirely different journey. And the good news is it can be a long one. And the downside of the long journey is it wears you out over time. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Janice, thank you for sharing. The isolation piece has been really challenging. She mentioned her husband just finished chemo, so being really careful about exposure to viruses, especially because COVID's spiking in California.
So the challenge for us, as my husband's the one with the Waldenstrom's, it affected his kidneys. The cells went, it's a rare thing that happens, but the cells can go into the kidneys before, the disease is detected and treatment is started. And of course, when he was first diagnosed, so I'm sure everybody has this reaction. It's like, oh my God, rare cancer, blood cancer. What are you going to do? As the last person said, how long are they going to live, and so on. The challenge for me is that I'm the kind of person that I'm like a super organized person. So I've been the one that's kept every single piece of paper, that knows every test result, that, deals with the history. And now we're going on something like, 9 years of history, not only with the Waldenstrom's, but with the kidney disease. It's oddly enough, the Waldenstrom's is stable. The kidney disease is getting worse and worse. And then as a caregiver, and this seems to affect older populations in general, then you're dealing with your own physical problems. I have severe arthritis. I have 4 joint replacements. We often joke, my husband says he's living under Damocles' sword, and I'm dying the death of 1,000 cuts, with your arthritis. So it's that sort of juggling, and also helping him take agency for his own disease, not being the one that says drink all the time and, oh, you have to eat, make sure you eat a balanced diet, a certain amount of protein, getting him to do this. He seemed to, and I think this is true with a lot of maybe longtime spouses who depend on each other, sort of, okay, she's taking care of everything, so I don't have to worry so much about it. And, that's a responsibility. It ranges between, well, do you infantilize this person, and take care of everything? Or do you let him, go to the doctor and tell them something that's not true because he doesn't really remember? So that's a real problem, that I can see. And it's like a constant balancing between the two.
And I imagine, Marilyn, too, like on any given day, it looks a little different, right? And so you're
Oh yeah,
constantly having to weave between those things as well.
uh yeah. So right now he's off having his IVIG, which he gets every month, and he's never had a cold in like 5 years, and I'm the one that gets the COVID and the colds and the whole, so it's just really it's a different way of living than we ever imagined.
Before we move on, I just want to make sure that no one else would like to share, because we certainly have time, and your stories are much more important than what I have to pull up on a slide.
I think Mary raised her hand if she wants to
Oh, thank you.
I have to unmute myself. This has been great, and I have to tell you, my husband has had Waldenstrom's for 15 years. He was diagnosed. He probably had it lots longer than that, and he's sitting here nodding his head on all of these things because he's listening. We are currently in Germany, so I'm pretty tired after working all day, and it's almost bedtime for me. But everything, all the things that have been touched on here, they sound real familiar. And when Boyd, my husband, was nodding his head on this, yeah. But it's and what I put in the chat there too, the survival rates when he first was diagnosed were 5 years. He's surpassed the current one, which is 12 years, and it has not been without lots of challenges. He's being treated. He also is a survivor of 2 other cancers that are unrelated. We live our lives. It's always there, though. It's always there, and it's just like there's something else going on right now, but it's like, oh, it's not the stupid cancer. So just having a presentation like this, or to share like this, is good, and I don't usually do, but here I am. So, but yeah, keep those journals, like someone else mentioned. And it really is hard to see the effect sometimes because we have 3 sons. They think dad is indestructible no matter what. And he's taken some pretty heavy hits, and he carries some pretty heavy loads. But just keep on and educate yourself. I mean, it's so important. And he does that. He takes information to his Mayo trained oncologist. And so 17 years, look at that. So yeah, just keep on. That's all I want to say
Oh. Mary, thank you for
to
sharing.
everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for being here after a long day, close to your bedtime.
I'm not the young person I used to be, and it was quite the decision to accept this job. We've been here since the end of January, and my husband came out of perhaps the 4th round of treatment. He is solo rituximab, basically. The last one was it was pretty rough on him. Like, had this job offer come any earlier, we probably would not have gone. But a lot went into that decision. He's going back to the States every about 4 months for having the consistency of the labs is important because he also has cryoglobulinemia. And so keeping the specimens warm, keeping everything, even when you take it to put it in warm tubes and keeping it warm to the lab and processing. So, and he's like, well, as long as he can do this, it's a pretty long haul from Frankfurt to Denver, but we'll see. We'll give it a few years, and I think we'll be done with it. But so far, we're going to Stuttgart on tomorrow night with the second largest Oktoberfest. Are you excited? I got a little top for it, but that's how we roll. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So Thanks for everybody.
Thank you for sharing. This is such beautiful sharing. I just want to make sure Anne put something in the chat that she is starting a caregiver group, and she's going to share more about that at the end. But hearing all of your stories and your experiences, I mean, Anne, I think it tells us a caregiver is really important. And so I'm glad that you're starting one. If it's okay, I'm going to move us along, but we'll have other opportunities to chat and be. Lindsay, were you going to say something? No.
Just thought I'd show my face.
Oh, okay.
I was enjoying, well, especially Linda, just nodding and acknowledging. And I thought, it's a nice sense of community when you see people's faces. And so I just.
Yes, thank you.
Thought I'd put my camera on.
As the speaker, I understand it's not possible for everyone, but as the speaker, it is wonderful to see faces and just even to know that you're with me or nodding or kind of here. So I'm going to return to the share screen here. One of the things that I don't, you all can tell me if I'm wrong here, but one of the things that often comes up in my conversations with caregivers, we may not use the word burnout per se, but certainly there's this sense of what this looks like. And so we talk about sort of this silent struggle that caregivers live through. And it's not something that we often openly talk about. And so I wanted to take a few moments to make sure that we talk about it here so that isolation and loneliness was certainly something that came up, not feeling alone here so that you can feel validated or even feel normalized that the range of things that you may be experiencing on all the different levels are not uncommon and certainly shared experience. So this is not an exhaustive list by any shape or form, but these are some of the things that I hear probably more in terms of thematic things that come up in conversations. So, we know that caregivers often experience anxiety around the disease, especially like whether it's disease progression or management of the disease, what the treatment looks like, what to think about the future, what that's going to look like, both medically and for your family. Someone or a couple of you already mentioned emotional isolation, but I'm going to say both socially and emotional isolation is pretty common because WM is rare. Caregivers may feel more isolated or maybe even unsupported. Sometimes friends and families don't always get it, right? And they don't know what the disease means or what it involves, or I think someone, I think Jazz, you mentioned having to be the one to share the information and how exhausting that can be. And then in return, getting millions of questions back. So this kind of ties in with a lot of the practical responsibilities that come up, the daily tasks. And you are an advocate for your person or yourself. You're having to act as the liaison between the patient or you as the patient and the medical team. And all of this can be really hard, especially if you're not feeling well or they're not feeling well. One thing that comes up quite often is the changing of roles, right? And the dynamics within the house or within the family unit. So in couples, right, there's often a shift in roles where a partner becomes more of a caregiver than an equal partner, and that sort of changes, intimacy changes, affection, some of these things that are within a partnership changes. Maybe it's between a parent and a child. That all looks different. And so it can be really hard to know how to balance these things and care for yourself through all of this. So we're going to hopefully jump into some strategies of what that might look like and to really think about taking care of ourselves. So we talked about some of the categories. What are some of the signs? And you can feel free to unmute or even put in the chat. We know caring for someone, especially someone with an illness, can be really demanding. I'm certain that you felt a range of emotions as you've cared for your loved ones or even dealing with your own diagnosis. And sometimes these emotions can be really strong. They might come and go as treatment looks different. I often hear patients and their loved ones say, like, it just feels like we're on a roller coaster. Does that resonate with any of you? These ups and downs, maybe feeling sad, afraid, tired, angry, worried. I think the most important thing, no matter what the range of emotion is there that you're feeling, is to know that there's absolutely no right or wrong way to feel or react. Everything you feel is normal. And sometimes, you might relate to some of these things in the list here, or maybe not, but at some point in time, it may be something that feels pretty prevalent to you. And so when we think about burnout, especially as a caregiver, there's often feeling tired, feeling overwhelmed. Maybe you're sleeping too much, which many caregivers say, nope, that's not happening. I'm not sleeping enough, right? Or loss of interest in activities and hobbies. And maybe it's not an active loss of interest, but because of circumstances that the interest and the activities sort of have to be the thing that goes away. Feeling more irritable, maybe even feeling hopeless or sometimes helpless, right? Like, I can see this person in front of me who I love and they're experiencing all these things and I can't help them, right? We think of it like, okay, I can feed them, I can give them something to drink, but I can't fix the thing that's happening in front of me. And that's a really hard emotion to sit with and feel and be with. And it also shows up in lots of different ways. So sometimes it's tension in the dynamics of the relationship, or it can feel like they're not listening to me and I'm just trying to help, and all of these sorts of interpersonal dynamics. And it can be really hard. Another part is these physical symptoms. And so I'm going to open it up here in a second, but if anyone feels comfortable to share whether these are some things that they've experienced or have seen in others. I know I'm kind of putting you back on the spot. I'm not going to unshare the screen just for this, but if there's even in the chat, if you'd like to sort of acknowledge it's a roller coaster. Mary, I see you read my mind with the feeling helpless there.
I think for me, it's, had really shifted the relationship that I had with my dad from going from one to he's my dad, he's the strongest man in the universe, to now I'm parenting my parent. And he doesn't necessarily want to receive the kind of help that I want to give him. So I've got to adapt, to his stoic style when I'm sort of more of a nurturing, touchy-feely person. So I think the adaptability piece is really important, but there's a draining bit of that, a little bit of a depletion. I feel depleted from that. And, what you said, you can't fix the thing itself. So I think, that's the biggest piece for me. It's like, can't fix the thing, so I'm just going to do whatever I can do. And, my big takeaway is just being consistently present counts.
Yeah. That presence is so important. And Anne, you bring up a really strong point there. And I think about even outside of, serious illness, we as humans, the way that we interact with everyone in our world, right, is often different. How we might want or need affection, care is different than the person in front of us. And so when there's now this caregiving dynamic, and we might see oh, I can give this thing, or I can do this thing, or I see this need, I want to be able to fill it. And the person in front of us doesn't operate in that same way. It can be extremely difficult to figure out how to be flexible. And there's a lot of learning curves that happen through all of this. Just going to peek in the chat here to make sure I'm not missing something. Yeah, it looks like everyone's just sort of recognizing the change in the dynamics and not being able to fix things. Yeah. Because this is a theme that seems to be coming up right now, I'm going to add in, there's a really wonderful grief counselor. Her name is Megan Devine. If you don't know who she is, she's a psychologist, has blogs, and has done a lot of grief support, but she writes a book, It's Okay to Not Be Okay. But then she also has a journal that says how to carry what can't be fixed. And so I'm just thinking about that as you all are mentioning this fixing part. And that's, we want to fix things, right? We're humans. We want to be able to make the thing better. So with all of these dynamic at plays, how do we prevent burnout? How do we cope? So I thought I would just throw on a slide here. What is coping? I think coping feels like such a big word sometimes, but really it's the efforts that we make as individuals to deal with stressful situations, right? So it is pretty simple, but preventing burnout, however, can be a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more complicated. So when we think about preventing burnout, we really have to think about how to balance caring for ourselves, how to appreciate that caring for ourselves too isn't selfish. It's actually necessary. It's necessary so you can show up, like Anne said, being present for your loved one or for yourself. So we'll get to some maybe hopefully strategies that are new, or maybe things that you're using or already have forgotten about, but to help maybe manage some of this stress and prevent burnout. And as we think about coping, it's really important there's any takeaway here, right? Coping well or just coping doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means sometimes taking really small steps, sometimes big steps, to care for yourself so that you can show up for your loved one. I mean, I'm certainly hearing here that the comment I made earlier about it being a marathon certainly is the case, where we're talking years and years that you all have been doing this. And so how to not burn yourself out, in the first couple months or first couple years, as this is going to be a long, hopefully, process, right? So as we jump into some of these strategies here, the first, we'll say, bucket that I want to talk about is the mental and emotional part. So how do we take care of ourselves here? First, I think it's always important for us to acknowledge our feelings, whether it's feeling frustrated, sad, feeling guilty, or even anger. Suppressing our emotions, believe it or not, can really increase our risk for burnout. So talking about it, whether it's a trusted person, whether it's a support group, whether it's journaling for yourself and just naming what it is you're feeling on any given day, getting it out somewhere and not holding it all. A lot of people say, I feel it here in my chest, and you can maybe even know, or your gut, like maybe there's something here I need to release. Some practical things are practicing mindfulness or stress reduction. So things that feel maybe or sound really simplistic, but yet are often really hard to find the time to do or feel like you remember to do them. Breathing exercises, meditation, maybe even guided imagery, stretching, yoga, these sorts of things. being in our body and helping to sort of see where things are showing up. There's lots of apps out there. I'm sure you probably all know things like Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer. Those can always be really helpful. Counseling, therapy, sometimes just helping to process the emotional strain. And I think someone wrote in the chat how important boundaries are. So developing some boundaries there. Joining a support group, right? And, most importantly, like self-care is not selfish, it's survival. And so reminding yourself of that when maybe those feelings of guilt come up that I'm taking time away or I'm doing something for myself here. The next bucket is physical and lifestyle sorts of things. So I was with a patient earlier today, actually, who was talking about asking for help and how difficult it is to ask for help and or accept it. And so if possible, and I would strongly recommend, if you can, delegating things as you need to, whether it's groceries or rides or sometimes even getting help with paperwork. Often people will offer to help too. And we might say, no, we've got it for whatever reason. People are offering because they're wanting to help. And so remembering too, by turning them away, we're actually taking something away from them. It can be really important to stay connected. So whether you schedule regular check-ins with your family or friends, caregiving can take over all aspects of your life, right? So not letting this like fully replace your personhood and parts of your personal life that are able to still sort of be there. Now, the last one on this slide, the setting boundaries. This one can be really difficult and also maybe one of the most important ones. And saying no is a really hard thing to do. Or maybe it's no to someone wants you to do something or needs you to do something, but you can't. So being able to say no without feeling guilt, creating limits on your time, especially when it's maybe dealing with demanding or critical family members. This is pretty general. And so what boundaries look like to you might look different to me or to someone else in the group, but figuring out what works for you. And boundaries can be flexible, but also shouldn't be, we need them in place, right, to be able to take care of ourselves, but they might change over time. So I think, setting a boundary today, in a week, it might look different, but giving yourself permission to, maybe it's increasing the boundary or setting a stronger boundary. So boundaries, there's a lot of, like, if you're interested, there's a lot of work out there and books out there that talk about setting boundaries if you need some more help around doing that, or learning from others, in your groups or with a therapist. The practical and sort of organizational piece. I'm a slide off, aren't I, here? I'll go back to so the social piece, I think that was where I was just talking about. So then the physical and the lifestyle, I started to jump ahead, sorry. I think we talked a little bit about this, like prioritizing sleep, your own nutrition, movement, like if you can get some short walks in, stretching. We talked about, balancing meals and nutrition for our loved one, but that includes ourselves too. Taking breaks if possible. I put on here respite, and I know that can be really difficult, especially depending on what stage of life you're in. Maybe everyone else is working too, or other people are retired and traveling and you don't have access to that. But if it's possible, even for a few hours a week, to give yourself some space from it. And certainly not not neglecting your own medical care. So maintaining that, I often hear people say, I haven't gone to the doctor in 2 years because we've been at the doctor so much for my spouse or my father. And so it is important to take care of yourself. Your health is just as important. Now we're in the practical and organizational piece. So I think someone mentioned earlier that at the beginning of diagnosis, spent a lot of time putting these things together and sort of planning for a future. And so these are some things to just sort of think about, like, can we plan ahead? I often hear from people like it's scary to do this, right? It brings, there's an emotional thread here to having to do legal paperwork or to think about future benefits, et cetera. And then I often hear patients and or their loved ones tell me, once I got it done and I could put it aside, I felt this huge sigh of relief. There was this sort of umbrella thing or this cloud that was just following me around. And so there are a couple tools out there that can be really helpful if you're not familiar with Caring Bridge. Caring Bridge is sort of like an online blog for you to be able to put information and send people the link so that you don't have to give updates over and over again. And this can be a place that people go. Sometimes like having shared calendars or medication tracking apps can be helpful too. Does anyone have any other ideas or any other things that have helped them stay sort of organized? If you think of one, feel free to pop it into the chat. Yeah, thanks, Marilyn. The lawyer meetings and thinking about like advanced care planning and wills can be really heavy. And also getting it done and completed can feel really good to have that part done. Excuse me. All right. So the title here was Empowering You All. So how are we doing that? I think one of the biggest ways that we can find empowerment as a caregiver is through connection. So building your supportive network, whether it's here, whether it's in your faith community, whether it's in your neighborhood, finding ways to feel connected to other people, right? We've talked about this isolation piece that comes with illness and caregiving, and to thwart that through all of this, it really is important to build a support network. Finding ways to advocate, like I'm going to kind of pick on you here, Anne, for a second, but, having gone through this with your father and now being an advocate and being part of IWMF is giving that's exactly what you're doing, right? And so finding your voice, finding ways to advocate for others, celebrating even the small wins, maybe it's whatever that looks like on any given day, whether it's being able to spend time together and not talking about it at all, or eating a full meal, or not, having to go to the hospital for a week or have a doctor's appointment on any given day. And remembering that you matter too. So taking care of yourself is really important. And it doesn't mean that you have to do more here. It means sort of protecting your own well-being while you're caring for the people around you. I'm going to share a screen here and just some self-reflection questions. And this is, I think, where I'd like to open back up the conversation. I'm going to pull the slide down. And so as you're thinking, maybe think about what helps you, as you're thinking about your own coping strategies, what has been helpful. Maybe we've talked about challenges. maybe talk about things that are going well or sources of strength. But these, and again, you'll get these slides, but these are questions, and there's many more that you could ask yourself in terms of, okay, how am I taking care of myself? And sort of giving yourself a space where you allow time for reflection and maybe even doing something different, so that you can strengthen and find resiliency here as you walk through the day-to-day of this. While I have the slides up, I'm just going to scroll through them so you can see there are a couple of resources here that are, thought I updated this page. I apologize. I had some other ones on here too. I'll fix it before I send it over to you, and then that way you can have them. But essentially, that's pretty much my presentation. So, but it doesn't mean we're done talking. So I would love for us all to sort of unmute, unvideo, and just maybe share some ways that you find, whether it's ways that you've experienced burnout and or ways that you've helped yourself cope, and what sort of given you strength and sustained you through the marathon. Anyone want to start?
I'm going to ask for your guidance. My husband was diagnosed recently, and we're 54, so it's new. So we still have people living. A lot of our kids are in the house, and just trying to manage the uncertainty of everything, future planning, life events, whatever else is going on. So I, as a caregiver, I'm trying to keep it together for everyone. And I'm struggling, obviously. It's not only my mom. I had to put her in hospice, and all this happened in 6 months. So she's gone in hospice, and the kicker was, I'm sorry, our 12-year-old lab died. So I really am like, it's a lot all of a sudden, and it's affecting my health. So I think, and what gets me all the time is just, it's the uncertainty. I thought we had gotten to a point in our lives where we are going to be able to have less responsibility, and now this is all kind of weighing on us. So, and I saw a lot of people saying, that you're still traveling, you're still doing all that stuff. And that gives me a lot of inspiration. But what do you do on those days that you really have kind of lost that hope?
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Well, I think and I feel for you. I really feel for you, because we're in our 70s. So I mean, we're in a different situation. Our kids are out and grown, and they're not here. But you've got so many irons in the fire that you're juggling, and you're trying to keep all the balls up in the air. It almost sounds like, just from, I think, people who've been living with or with a spouse who's had WM for a long time, it almost sounds like that is the least of the things that you need to be truly worried about at this point. I think, I don't know who's saying your husband, but one thing we learned was it was critical to see or consult with a WM specialist, one of the few in the country, because the difference between the confidence and the compassion and the understanding from somebody like Dr. Castillo and the local oncologists here, who maybe see one of these cases a year possibly and don't really understand it that well, I mean, that just changed our life, really. I mean, it was just like, yeah, okay, this is something you're going to live with. We're going to monitor it every 3 months. It's manageable. Just don't let it take over your life. I know it's very easy to say that, but but it's also true.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, go live your life. He says, go live your life in between blood tests, go live your life. Just deal with whatever symptom comes up. Just deal with the symptom and go live your life. Worry about, you have kids, worry about them at this point.
Well, like your husband, my husband also has the kidney disease as well. And
Yeah.
ABA is a really rare kidney disease with a horrible prognosis.
Yeah.
So it's a very rare one. There's only 81 cases in the whole United States on top of the
Yes, yeah.
WM.
I haven't heard of all. Actually, I have just walking in from his IVIG. So Mary.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the part that gets me more. And, we also, because of where we are stage in life, it's also, he's a fireman. So he's not at a part where we can retire yet because he didn't become a fireman until we were 40. So we have all that baggage as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul's Waldenstrom's came about it from being a first responder at the World Trade Center.
Oh, okay.
I hear you. I hear you.
I understand. Yeah, he wasn't a fireman, but he was a first responder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nancy, thank you for speaking up. I was wanting other people to chime in before I spoke. I think what you highlight here too is that often when a diagnosis like this comes, it's never just one thing. There's so many people that I see day in and day out of the cancer center that have 5 different things, whether it's multiple deaths or losses or job changing, or there's so much life that is going on, and this is another thing. I don't know if you've been connected to like a support group there, or if they offer like a social worker that you could talk to. I would strongly recommend getting some emotional support through this. I think you don't have to do this part alone, and to kind of hear everyone's story here and have some hope and inspiration for the future. And right now, you may need some tighter hand holding. And so I would recommend that. And Anne can certainly reach out to me too, or connect if you need help getting connected to wherever you're at in the world.
And the only thing I would add, Nancy, is to perhaps consider joining the IWMF's affinity support group for 2 things. One, the caregiver, which we're just starting, and I'll share that more about that in a moment. But also the young WM support has its own support group. And so the sets of issues that you're facing are maybe a little bit different. How to plan for the future, or where you're going to be telling your kids about this. What do you tell your kids? How do you, all of that stuff. So if you like, I'll follow up with an email with you, Nancy, and share all of that with you. And then if there's anybody else here who has, had a spouse with WM for decades, and kind of weathered the storm together, giving Nancy a bit of hope. I mean, I know there are folks who have had WM for decades and decades, and they're living beyond 25 years, beyond 30 years with this. Now, of course, what we hear is that your husband has another thing going on. So, that sounds challenging, and I'm sorry to hear that. But I just wanted to say that about the young WM support group.
I saw that, but I didn't know where I fit because it says 50 or under 50. And I'm like, shit, I'm not under 50, but I'm not over that way. So I didn't know where to go. But you gave me the thumbs up to break the rule there. So I will.
Well, I'm 55 and I consider myself young. So
there you go. There you go.
Anyone else have, whether it's, want to talk about your own coping experience or have questions or thoughts for the group?
Rose
Hi,
here.
Rose.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
For coping strategies, we see a therapist at our cancer center. They have wonderful programs, palliative programs, and we don't go enough. And things will happen, and you all of a sudden you realize we're yelling at each other again. So we need to go back to the therapist. But I also try to get Reiki, and I don't do that enough either. I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but it's an energy work that a massage therapist I go to can give. And I'm learning how to do the lymph. It's not a massage. It's a sort of a massage. My husband gets a lot of the lymphedema, and I've watched it on YouTube, and now we're getting ready to go to an actual specialist to show me what to do that's right, and so I don't hurt him, because he also has horrible varicose veins in his legs. So as I'm trying to move the lymph back to his lymph nodes, I don't want to injure him in that way too. So I really do think the therapy, though, has been the best, and just being able to talk to somebody. I hadn't thought about the journaling, so thank you for that. But that's what I do.
Thank you, Rose. Anyone else want to share? I want to make sure, about 5 minutes left, and I know Anne has some things to talk about, but if no one else has anything to share, I am so thankful to have spent this time with you all and get to know you a little bit. I will send Anne my slides so that you have them as a resource if you have felt them to be helpful. I appreciate you all speaking up, sharing with one another. You really are the experts here and the heroes here too. So thanks for showing up today and being present. I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Jill. You're getting a
You're
lot of
so
thanks coming in the chat.
Aw, very sweet. Thank you.
And I guess I'll just close things up by sharing that I don't know if you know this, but IWMF has a wellness program, and all of these offerings are for you as well. We have a lot of mind, body, everything that is on Jill's list is in our wellness program: yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, fitness. We have meditation and just relaxation guidance. Kind of take a little self-care pause. That's, something that I enjoy being a part of and also receiving as well. So that is on offer for you. And if you have any questions about any of that, you can always email me. And then in addition, we are starting our very own first WM caregiver support group. And that is whether you yourself have a WM and you're a caregiver, or you are caregiving someone with WM. It doesn't matter how much you do. You're welcome in that space. Our first meeting is going to be November 6th, and that's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So I hope we can continue all of this great conversation. And I know that might be a little bit late for those of us who are, in the UK or in Europe. So in this first meeting, we're also going to talk about the timing of things. And if you want to email me and let me know, what we could maybe do is alternate between, a weekend morning and an evening weekday. So try to hit all the times that might be useful for you. So I'm just going to I'll let you know that I'll share in our follow-up email not only Jill's amazing slides, any resources, additional resources she has for us. I'll share a bit more about the wellness program and how to join that support group. And then you'll also be, invited to reach out to me anytime with anything. So I so appreciate this opportunity to connect with caregivers. You're my people. What can I say? And Jill, wonderful, wonderful job. We really appreciated your presence with us today. Thank you.